Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Micheletti podcast. Today, I have a dope guest, Travis Fisher.
What's up?
What's the name of your company? Rose Street
Collective.
Yes, sir. Great marketing agency. You're a guy that has a lot of different skill sets. I mean, you dabble in the organic content realm.
Yep.
You've also told me that you do some paid ad stuff,
yep.
and you've done email marketing.
Yep.
You're a well-versed individual.
Yeah, it's you could say well-versed or crazy, whichever you prefer.
To take on that much, you got to have a little bit of insanity.
Yeah, well, or a lot of perfectionism as well, which also isn't great. But yeah, no, I've definitely learned a lot from just years of getting things done, right? Like that's at the end of the day, like if a client needs something done, I've always been the guy where it's like, I'll figure it out, you know, which is good and bad, because then you become the guy who it's like, Travis will figure it out. And then they expect you to do everything, right? Yeah. But you learn so much. You learn what you're good at. You learn, you know, like we were talking about before the podcast, you know, if you're hiring an individual, right, you can learn to see if their skills are up to par. Yeah. Right. So it's helped a lot, but also driven me and my girlfriend crazy. So
yeah. Well, tell me a little bit about your backstory, because you run your business for how long now?
Just over 6 years now.
Okay.
Yeah.
What's been the journey and the progression of that business from year one to where you're at now? Well,
I mean, when I first got started, it was just content. Right, like me and my buddy were a great tag team duo, and we were actually managing a restaurant in downtown Pleasanton, Sabio on Main. I was the bar manager, he was the floor manager, and we just had a great dynamic. And we were always thinking of cool strategies for, you know, trying to push out the word about the restaurant to the community. And him and I were like, hey, like let's get this thing started. We actually met Tom at Sabio, and he took a liking to us, and we were like, oh, let's make videos for local businesses. And then so we tried that for a little bit, and then eventually, you know, one of the businesses we made videos for was like, hey, do you know anyone who could be a social media manager? And I didn't, but I thought I could figure it out. So exactly, you know, I kind of took that same approach I was just talking about, figured out social media, right? Kept going from there. They're like, hey, we need to send emails. I was like, I'll figure it out. Taught myself how to do emails, taught myself how to do paid ads. And through a handful of very high maintenance clients, I essentially explored every avenue of digital marketing and print marketing and graphic design and advertising, essentially everything except for PR. That was the one area I never really touched, you know, getting out to the news articles and blogs. But, you know, I just kept kind of running into a wall, figuring out how to get through the wall or building a door to get through the wall, and just taught myself a whole bunch about marketing. And then slowly over time, coming up on, you know, the 4th, 5th, 6th year, niching down. Okay. Right. Eliminating the stuff that's like just taking up too much time or isn't high value, or it's just like a pain, right? And like really niching down back to the heart of where it all started, the content, right? But then through that, I was able to gather so many supporting skills to make that content more impactful, make the content more polished, articulate what content does to the client, like does for the client, right, to the client, right? Being able to articulate that and understanding the true purpose of it versus like, oh, this is a super cool video, but what does it do? What is it doing for the client? What is it doing for the audience? What is it doing for the customer, and et cetera? So,
well, let's dig into what content does, and let's talk especially about the different types of content that you've created. Since you've been doing this for between 6 and 7 years now, what have you seen from a content perspective that drives the best results for businesses? Is it email marketing? Is it paid advertising? Is it content marketing? What is your tiered system for what businesses should be focusing on, and what drives the best, like, tangible results for businesses?
Well, and so tangible is a really good word to use, because at the end of the day, you know, I like to think of all marketing as driving results, right? But something with organic, it takes much longer in terms of a timeline to be able to see those results and measure those results. Something like paid advertising, you're going to see results much quicker, right? From my perspective, when it comes to like marketing, it's really about where the client is at within their business, right? If their conversions aren't set up, right, we could make 5 back-to-back viral videos, but if we're funneling people into a dysfunctional funnel, and people are getting frustrated and not even being able to convert because the website's broken or the button doesn't work, or right, and I've experienced that so many times with clients, right, which is so defeating. But at the end of the day, from a content perspective, what I've seen to drive results is that organic style, story-driven style of content. But I think a great question to ask is, where are we driving in the first place? Where are we trying to get them to? And from what I've seen, to kind of answer your question more directly, emails. I believe so strongly after 6 years of doing this that emails can convert so well, right? And using the content, because if you're a business and you don't have, an e-commerce brand, right? Like for a restaurant, for example, if you can get their email and you can keep them active and engaged in a warm lead through email, when you have an event, that open rate's going to be so much higher. And these are people who have literally shown and told you that I am interested in your business.
Yeah.
Right. I want to hear about your business. I'm giving you my contact information so you can directly advertise to me because I am likely to purchase from you. Right. It's gold. Right. Versus an Instagram follower. It's like they could be following you for just a plethora of reasons.
Especially if you don't niche down your content. If you have
Exactly.
a whole arrangement and an assortment of content, if you're talking about sports, if you're talking about your business, if you're talking about your family vacations,
Yep.
people can be coming for different reasons.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's why at the end of the day, if you can use all of these mediums to drive email signups, and then using those emails to try to further convert, right? That's not to say you can't use social media and paid ads to try to convert directly. I've seen amazing results with that, like 200% ROAS from paid advertising and an amazing click-through rate because the content was great, the targeting was great, and we saw direct conversions. But the idea of, paying $2 a month for an email service, sending one email and selling out all of your tickets in 15 minutes because you have such a highly engaged, email audience.
Yeah, let's bring it back for define ROAS because that's an acronym that if you're not in marketing, you probably don't know what it means.
Return on ad spend, right? So there's two. There's return on ad spend and then return on. I don't know.
I only knew the first one.
Yeah, there's another one because I remember I had used the wrong one time with like a really high-end marketing guy who's like, what are you talking about? So it kind of scarred me a little bit. But return on ad spend. So it's essentially the value that essentially says, hey, you spent this much. Here's how much you got back from that. And then here's a value. The ROAS would be correlated to that return, right? So like a 200% ROAS, would, be if you spent, I don't know, $10 and you made, what would that be?
$20 in return, right?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah,
because you're essentially 2xing your dollars. So
Exactly.
it's like for every dollar that you put in, you're getting $2 in return.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
So which is great, right? And the marketing campaign we were running back then. Like we were spending a lot of money. It was like a $5,000 ad budget or something like that. But
wow.
So
is that per month or what was that?
Yeah, that was like per month.
Okay.
Yeah. So we've worked with some pretty big ad budgets. The biggest budget that I've ever been a part of was like in the $80,000 a month, specifically on Instagram and Facebook.
Holy crap.
Yeah, it was a drape company. They sold drapes. Yeah.
And they just had $80K to burn every single month on paid ads?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Do you remember what their ROAS was, return on ad spend?
I don't remember the exact return, but it was better than when we came in, that's for sure.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't remember the exact number.
Well, let's bring it back to email marketing because you said that that's a really, really good conversion tactic. When you think about converting through email, obviously you're bringing in the emails, but how do you collect people's emails in the first place? So you get a viral video, they click on the link. Mm-hmm. Are you offering them something to collect their email? Are you just saying, hey, for updates, what does that conversion piece look like to get the person's email?
Well, it really all depends on like if you have something to offer in the first place, right? I think if you want to see higher conversions, having something like you're suggesting where it's like, hey, sign up and I'll send you a free PDF of top 10, paid ad strategies.
Okay.
I don't know, right? That's going to have a much higher conversion than just saying, hey, sign up for my newsletter, right? You'll still see some conversions from the newsletter side, but you really you'll be getting the people who are just signing up for everything. If you want to capture the people who are niched into your market, I think having, like you suggested, some type of offer, right?
Yeah,
but
lead magnet.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is simple as having a viral video and saying, click the link in my bio, or, there's a lot of services now like ManyChat, if you've heard of that.
I use it all the time.
It's amazing.
Spectacular.
Yeah. So that's a great way to do it. Instead of having them click through the link in the bio, you could say comment a star emoji and I'll send you this in the DM.
It's about reducing friction. How can you lower the actions that it takes for them to give you their information, for them to get the thing that you want to get from them.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, and that's like one of the most tried and true marketing tactics there is, right? Like you said, reducing friction, right? And that goes back to what we were talking about just previously about conversions, right? If you get those viral videos, if you have the best performing ad in the world, but the friction to get to the actual conversion itself, if there's too much friction, you're just burning money. You're just wasting time. And like, so that's my biggest piece of advice to any business owner out there. Before you even think about marketing, get your conversion set up correctly, right? Make sure the funnel works and it's low friction.
And I'm sure you've experienced this as well, but from my experience, people want to ask, well, what's the return on investment? Well, what is your conversion process? What is your sales process? Because when you're starting to market through paid ads, through email, through any source, you need to understand what your conversion funnel looks like. And if you don't have that set up, then what do you expect? You think you're just going to post content and people are going to DM you? Hey, I want to buy a house. Hey, I want to go to your restaurant. Hey, I want to do this. Hey, I want to do that. I want floors. No, you have to prompt them. You have to tell them explicitly what to do to get the thing that they want so you can service them.
Exactly.
But if you don't have that set in place, you're just hoping.
You're
just praying,
just wasting time, crossing your fingers. And I see it all the time, and it's so true. It sounds funny because it's like, well, who would do that? Everyone. So many people do that, where it's like, oh, well, I just have to post, and like if they really want, they'll DM me. It's like you don't even have your phone number in your bio. You don't have your email in there. There's no website link. You just really think they're going to DM you.
Again, it's about reducing friction. And that's something that I think a lot of people should take from this. It's like, how can you reduce the amount of, you know what? I'm going to tell a story on this because I remember reading, I was just reading Elon Musk's biography.
Nice.
And it was talking about when he first started X.com that ended up merging with PayPal. And the number one thing that he was focused on in the beginning of starting X.com when he was programming was how to reduce the keystrokes for somebody to send money, for somebody to log in. It was all about reducing the number of keystrokes to have the action that people wanted to take. And why is that? Because when it's easier to do things, people are more likely to do it and stay on your website. When there's more things to do, when there's more actions that you have to take, when they have to research how to do things, they're more likely to click off and go find the simpler version.
Exactly.
So it's not always about the level of service. It's not always about how good your content is. It's about how to make it simpler for the consumer, right?
Exactly. Well, and that's one of the biggest things that I've learned even from executing within my business and in terms of servicing for my clients, right? Is how can we make it so the client, how can we get as close as possible to our client not having to lift a finger, right? Because in the beginning, it's like, oh, like when can we shoot? When's a good time to shoot? Oh, can you email the staff? Let them know we're shooting. What do you want to see? What do you want the page to look like? What do you think is going to drive? But then over time, it's like, hey, we'll send the email for you to the staff. Like we'll do everything. We'll think of the ideas. We're going to do the research. We're going to shoot the content. Like all you have to do is just look at it and approve it. But like at the end of the day, I think with content creation and social media management and marketing, at the end of the day, business owners are smart. If they had the time, they could do it themselves. But they're not hiring you to always just run social media. They're hiring to save and buy back their time. Just like the book we were talking about, So I think that even goes deeper into that friction of like not only with closing the sale, but then even after the sale to retain the client, right? Because with marketing, just as cleaning up your conversions and making sure it's low friction, there's also like, if you wanted to be a perfectionist about it, and I heard, I forget his name, Rory Sutherland, I think his name is.
I haven't heard of him.
He's like an old school marketing guy, but he was saying that if you wanted to be a perfectionist about marketing, the first place you should start is return purchases.
Okay.
Getting the funnel so tight that like they're likely to purchase again, and then focusing on conversions, and then focusing on brand, and then focusing on the deliverables and the the more performance-based marketing.
That's interesting. So it's like the lowest hanging fruit, because if somebody has already purchased from you, then it might be a lot easier for them to purchase from you again because they already have experience with the product, right?
Exactly. Well, and then the flow is so clean. Right. Okay. Because again, even with a lot of the companies that I helped, like Yachtly, for example, is a company I'm strongly correlated with, and the customer service side is crucial, right? Because people are always focused about the conversions, and then when you do get the conversion, what about after? What if they want a refund? What if they need support? Do you have your phone number on the website? You need these things publicly accessible, and like numbers people are always so focused about reducing costs. It's like, well, how can we get the phone call shorter? How can we get this, reduced, and et cetera? So I think, having that return purchase and that customer support and service installed, you're going to have a higher retention. If you're on a subscription-based model, you're going to have higher retention rates. If you're just on a kind of an e-commerce style, you're going to have more buyback, more return customers and that loyalty, because there's nothing better than picking up the phone and being able to call a business, man. That's one thing that I think is just like so underrated. I will actually not work with companies a lot of the time and like third-party softwares and stuff like that if there's not a customer support. If I have to go through email and I can't talk to, it's like, dude, my time is valuable. You think I'm going to be able to field 5 back and forth emails, so
at least until they get up to scale. Because like Stripe and Squarespace, they're like that, where they don't have a customer service line to call. But they've got to the point where it's like, look, you can get frustrated, but we have such a good product that there's not a lot of people that can really compete, where like you just gonna have to
what are you going to do? Yeah. You don't have a choice.
QuickBooks is kind of like that too. But let's come back from an actionable standpoint. When it comes to collecting emails, okay, now I have this 100-person, 1,000-person, 10,000-person database of people that I can market to because I've had viral content. Now what? How do I convert those people into sales over a period of time?
Well, so one of the biggest things is, while you've been collecting these emails, how much time has passed, right? So while you're collecting these emails, having some type of automation or some type of email plan or campaign in place to continue providing value, right? Because if let's say you have that 10 top tips for digital marketing, that's the first PDF that you execute, right? They get the value right up front. Now they're excited, right? But if it takes 2 months until you send another email, they might forget who you are. You might pop up and be like, oh, who did unsubscribe? I'm not even going to give this, but if in between then, a week or 2 weeks after that initial reach out with the PDF, you follow up with, hey, here's an amazing article about the movements within digital media, or hey, here's a really cool YouTube video, or hey, here's a blog style post about this, or a vlog style post about that, right? You're still keeping them warm. So while you have them warm, converting from there is much easier, right? And at that point, it's as simple as just crafting a really nice designed email. And it doesn't even have to be like, phenomenal with motion graphics and stuff. It could just be clear cut, straight to the point. It's like, here's my offer. And that's where the sales really comes in, is making sure that you have that upfront, value, problem solution oriented style of email, where it's like, hey, like, we've heard your feedback and we've decided to launch this program. The value is $300, but we'll give it to you for $50 or whatever, right? But by then they're warm, they're interested, they're curious. They know who you are. They trust you because you've already given so much value, right? And Gary Vee talks about that all the time, is you give value, give value, give value, give value. And when you finally ask free value, by the way, give free value, right? And then when you finally ask for return, they're much more likely to purchase.
Alex Hormozi follows that same concept. Where I think a lot of people follow that concept that do it successfully. When you look at the people that market on social media and actually get a return from it, it's interesting because there's actually very few and far between, I feel like. There's people that get good returns, but who gets like incrementally great returns? Who has, talking about ROAS, who's getting 1,000x? Who's getting just like crazy returns on their money? And it's oftentimes they follow a lot of those strategies. Where I am on Layla Hormozi's email, or Alex Hormozi and Layla Hormozi's email. And sometimes she'll just send out a random email that says, hey, thanks for the support. Thank you for the support and following my channel. We couldn't do this without you guys. That's it. But what does that do? You see her in your inbox. So then when she markets her business workshop, then it's not like, who's this? I didn't even know I was on her email campaign. Plus, she builds the goodwill. But one thing that I really like from the book .com Secrets, I don't know if you've read it. It's from Russell Brunson. But he talks about email campaigns because it's a book all about online sales funnels. And the email campaign that he runs a lot is the daily Seinfeld email. And a daily Seinfeld email is essentially like, think of it like a vlog, but in email form. So he will send it out every single day, he said. But essentially, you're just writing a quick story about something that's happened to you. And then your call to action is tying your offer back into the story that you just told. So if you're trying to sell, one of his things was he was trying to help business owners make more money. So he told a story about how he got on the phone with a guy that sold golf clubs that he's been trying to work for a really, really long time. And the guy was like, what do you know? You're too young. You don't know anything. And then his call to action was essentially, well, little did he know, but I've started X number of businesses and I've helped them get X number of results. And I decided to start my own golf club thing and I got X results. So if you guys want to get something similar, here's the call to action. Go sign up for this. So it's like telling these stories as frequently as possible through the daily Seinfeld format to stay in front of people. And again, coming back to stories. And then you're pitching your offer through that. Then when you go for the right hook, like jab, 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 right hook, it's easy because people already have an affinity towards you.
Exactly.
So that's a concept. I haven't tested it all the way so far, but it's something, because email campaigns also take time.
Yeah, they really
take time and energy.
Yeah. Luckily, though, with like a lot of the platforms, like even Squarespace or Wix or a lot of the website hosting platforms, they come with an automatic like email builder, which the templates are pretty solid. I mean, you're not going to obviously get the robust, Nike style emails out of those templates, but like you just said with Layla Hermosi, right? I'm sure that email wasn't extravagant. It was probably just text.
It's super simple.
Yeah.
It's super simple. I'll literally pull it up right now. It's just text. It's raw. It's clean. And I think the only thing that's on there is at the bottom of the email, they have acquisition.com. All they have is acquisition. So literally, here are the last 5 emails that I've gotten from her. 1, I appreciate you. 2, thank you. 3, here's a winning ad you can model. 3, and then, there's 4. And then the last one is only open if you own a business and want to scale. So 2 right hooks and 2 value props. And 2 of them, the value props aren't even value props. And then when I click open the email, this is how it's for. I can't really turn my computer, but it's formatted literally. It's to the left. It's not like in the center. It's to the left, and it's just text. It's 7 lines of content.
And
then at the bottom, it's acquisition.com. It's separated too. And then at the bottom, it's acquisition.com. Each line has 1 sentence. And that's it. So it doesn't need flashy anything. And I guarantee she probably got, because people see that. And I think the other underrated thing is when people see you in their email, all the different platforms and websites talk to each other. So if Gmail sees that you're interacting with her on email, is it not then going to push her content to you on Instagram
more aggressively?
When Dan Martell sends you an email and you click on it and you open it and you interacted with it, is it not going to then say, hey, we should push that to him on Instagram?
Exactly.
Or subconsciously, even without them doing their whole voodoo stuff, even just subconsciously, if you're opening their emails and then you see a piece of content, are you not more likely to watch that thing? And I think the answer is you probably will be.
For sure.
Because you're enjoying them as a person. You're enjoying the things that they're pushing to you.
Exactly. Well, and it's I correlate it to my music background. Like, when I first got started, I would make some horrible songs, just awful to listen to. Like, they would hurt your ears. But like while you're editing it, you listen to it more and more and more, and then it starts to grow on you in a weird way, right? So even with the idea of like just seeing her name in your inbox, right? Even if you have a strong, rejection against someone, if you just keep seeing them and seeing them and seeing them and seeing them, like Andrew Tate, right? Most people probably have seen him so many times, like, oh, this guy's horrible. But then the next thing you know, they've seen him so much that they're going to check out a long format YouTube video from him just to see, because they're curious now.
That story hit with me actually, because that's what happened to me at first, because what I saw was a bunch of clips of him saying some like blasphemous stuff. And it was crazy. It was crazy enough for me to be like, fuck this dude. This dude sucks. And then eventually one piece of content came to me, and that was all like the misogynistic type stuff that people will reframe. And then eventually a video came about mindset, and I was like, oh, that's actually interesting. So then another piece came up, and I was like, okay, this guy might not be the best. Who the fuck is? But he has some good points. He has some valid points. So that got me thinking. So I actually started getting involved in. So I'm not part of the real world, but I'm on his email campaign.
Same.
I do that more to analyze his copy than I do for the actual content, because it's obviously working. But no, I think that point's gold. The more that you see someone, whether you love it or don't like it, I think there's an extent you don't want to polarize yourself so much to the point. No, I don't think everyone can follow the Andrew Tate model and be successful with it, because that takes a particular type of person. But I'm 100% on board with that. Let's talk a little bit about AI and marketing, because I think one of the most leveraged resources, or one of the most leveraged ways of AI, is probably writing out emails, because people hate actually copywriting. They hate putting the time to writing emails. So what are you seeing in the marketing space when it comes to AI, and how effective is AI when people are marketing? What are some ways they can use it? What are some ways that they shouldn't be using it? What are your overall thoughts?
I think right off the bat, one way to not use it, and I'm not going to focus on this just yet, but the creativity side of things.
Okay.
I think that it's good for sparking an idea, but pushing it to be like, oh, let's just let it run all our creative. Like, at the end of the day, that's the thing that I don't think AI will be able to take over, is the creative side. Where I see it excelling is, like you said, the email copy, the tasks, the low-hanging fruit, right? Where it's like, oh, let me draft this, email, or this contract. And again, if you have to draft your contracts, make sure you double check because it's a contract. But, you know, social media captions and tweaking it from there, you know, taking meeting notes and marketing notes and brand notes and funneling it into ChatGPT and saying, hey, based off these notes, what does that tell you about the brand? And seeing if your notes were accurate, seeing if it matches the brand, taking your Instagram captions and pumping them in and saying, hey, based on this Instagram caption, how does this make you feel? If you were an audience member, how would this make you feel, right? Like utilizing it to gather more data and then cut down on tasks that you would traditionally have to hire out, right? Like writing an email, it does take a long time, right? But if you take a general idea, and especially with ChatGPT now where you can hit the little microphone and just talk to it, like talk about a game changer, right?
Yeah.
Like I'll have some complex problem that like is so unique to a specific client that like to type it all down would take like an hour, but I could sit there and ramble for 5 minutes and stumble on my words and say the wrong thing and be like, wait a second, I don't mean that, I mean this. And it'll get it no problem. And it'll funnel it back to you in an organized manner that then can help you articulate it to other people within the company. So obviously things like ChatGPT, we were talking about podcast, Pod AI, amazing for editing, right? There's so much editing software out there now that cuts down on time, just integrating AI. Yeah. Right. So much footage that I've captured in the past on more low quality cameras, you know, there'd be grain or it'd be out of focus. There's a thing called Topaz AI now where it just upscales it beautifully and fixes the focus and takes low quality footage and makes it look 4K. Wow. And it's like, you know, and then obviously like, you know, the image removal of being able to, you know, have something in the background of a photo, right? You would traditionally just Photoshop it, but you couldn't do that for video. And if you did, it would take hours and hours and hours and a very specific skill set. But now, like on CapCut, for example, you know, it's like you can go on there and just remove it, no problem. And traditionally, it would have taken like 7 hours of a very highly skilled individual, where you can do it in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. So I think the question is, what can AI not do? Right? It's just more so how can you integrate it while keeping the heart of the content, the heart of the email, the heart of the ad, the message, the story of the ad intact, right? So I know that was kind of a rambly
No, that was it was really good. I think that a lot of the things that you said are accurate. It's also I think about things in like a percentage scale. So when you think about AI, I don't think it's good to think about it from, okay, it's going to take 100% of this activity. Like you mentioned with the contracts, always want to go back and review the thing, right? Even when it's writing email copy. Because coming back to the Daily Seinfeld example, let's say that someone wanted to execute on that. Maybe you're not the best copywriter. Maybe you're not the best at structuring things in a way that people are going to be able to consume and read, right? Yeah. But what if you just wrote this paragraph long thing of what happened during the day, fed it what you wanted it to do, and then it would organize it in an email for you. Then you just review and you tweak. Yep. So I don't think that it's handling 100% of the activity for you, but it's almost like having a second you. Yeah. It's like having a second you, a second employee, a third employee, an administrative assistant, those activities where, you have to delegate to that person, but you're not just going to let them run your business for you.
Exactly.
You're still going to trust but verify.
Exactly.
It's the 10, what was it? It was the 10-80-10 rule from buy back your time. Exactly. Actually, you do the front 10%, you delegate the 80, the middle 80, and then you come back at the end for the last 10%. And I think that's a good rule to use for delegation and AI.
Oh, 100%. Well, you hit it right on the nail, right? Like a 10-80-10, right? You don't never trust AI. Like, trust AI to do a pretty good job, but you always have to clean up, right? Because it still makes mistakes. It still just doesn't even make sense sometimes, or it completely misses the point. And then you could say, no, I meant this, and it'll still make the same mistake. Yep. So really just making sure, like you suggested, right? Like treating it like an employee. You're not just going to let an employee send a high ticket email without you to at least double checking it and maybe moving some stuff around, right? I think it also speaks to the importance of educating yourself, though. Because if you're not educated and you're leveraging it 100%, and you're relying on all the information that it gives you, you can't trust but verify because you don't have the information that you need to verify. So I think that that's something that I've had to take, because I listened to a live session recently. Do you know the School of Hard Knocks Instagram account? Yeah. Okay, so they launched a community on School that's like $37 a month, and they do interviews with the people. They do like longer interviews and Q&As with the people that they actually bring on. So they're people that have like 8-10 figure businesses. Really, really good people. And there was one guy that runs a $1 billion VR business. Oh, cool. Which is really, really cool. And he was saying how he uses AI
every 30 minutes. Like if he's not using AI every 30 minutes, then he knows that he's actually falling behind on his day, just for administrative activities.
Yeah.
Funneling stuff in there, using it to organize data, using it to write things out. If he needs to write out an email or an email response, he'll type out a sentence, be like, okay, structure this, and then he'll just send it out. So super, super good way to save your time, but you got to learn, you got to educate yourself, and you got to trust but verify.
Well, and one of the first kind of use cases I saw with AI within my own business that I was like, oh, okay, wow, like there's something here, right? Is I was in the process of raising my prices.
Okay.
And to be honest, my prices, if anything, needed to be raised for quite some time because I was very under market.
Like most businesses.
Yeah. But, as raising prices, from a sales standpoint, I utilized AI to be like, because I typed up this whole thing of like what you get for the packages, the deliverables, the execution, the time, how it works, the funnel. And I treated AI as if it was first a very kind of hard sell, right? Be like, hey, where do you see the holes in this sales pitch, right? What would you say, could be improved? And then after that, saying, what would you say to someone who says that this seems like it's overpriced? Or what would you say if they said, I don't see the value? Or why am I paying so much for this side? Or why is this cost so much? Or why does this
You're using it to handle objections, essentially.
Exactly. And one of the things, because when I think content as a whole, right? I think content creation as a whole. It's like, I know the amount of work that goes into it. I know. But when you say, oh yeah, it's X amount for content creation, it's like, why is it so much? Well, and AI pumped it out. It was like, there's copywriting, there's the creative side, there's the time here, time there, time. And it broke down a task that in my brain I knew but couldn't articulate all the fine minute details of what goes into executing that task. But with chat, it just pumped it out in this amazing way that's like, wow, you know what, I need to raise my prices even higher because there's so much that goes into it. So that was a huge game changer for me for that objection thing, so
that's gold. I love that, man. Let's dig into the creativity because we kind of touched on it. And I want to talk about the importance of creativity within content, because something that I've kind of had a back and forth on is how much effort do I put into the creativity of a piece of content that I'm pushing out. And I think that it's important to define creativity as well. So when you think of creativity in content, how do you define what creativity is? Is it based on I need to put in an hour trying to come up with this 60-second script? Is it based on what are some of the elements within creativity in content that you think of if you're trying to put together a piece?
The first thing that I think of is emotion. That's the one thing that, and that's not the only thing that goes into creativity, and everyone has a different approach for creativity. But again, I think creativity, we all have it, right? And I think all of our individual creativities are unique, right? Someone might be much more creative when it comes to audio, right? Or painting or so on. And I've discovered through my life that emotion is where I can really pull from the depths of creativity personally. So that's the first thing I think of when I'm trying to create a piece of content, right? Because we'll do the back end research, we'll get the hooks, we'll get the data to prove that this video will probably perform better than this video based on the trends and the numbers and the other competitors in the market and all this stuff. But from there, that's what the creative kicks in, right? You have the structure, but how do we make it unique? How do we make it different? How do we impact? Right? And that's the thing that always drives it for me is impactful emotion, right? How can I just change this song, right? Because something as simple as the song that you choose can just change so much about the emotion. I was recently working on a project for a med spa, and the audio was much more fun and poppy, and it had a very fun and funny vibe to it. And I remember that the conversations I had with a client when we first onboarded them, we were talking about why they're doing it, how they want skincare to be perceived as not something superficial, but something that gives you inner confidence. And I was like, wait a second, that's not a funny, that doesn't sound funny. We need to put more heart in there. So all I did was change the song, and something that was funny and hilarious was wow, am I tearing up? And it moves you, and it turns something that is technically advertisement, right? It's technically an ad, but now you feel attached to it. You feel a connection to it, and it's something sentimental, right? So that's the first thing that I tap into with the creativity. And another example is a postcard for the business Yachtly. We were thinking of ways to have, return customers and, existing customers refer our business to their friends and family. And we're like, oh, we can make a flyer, which is a great idea. Flyers are a great idea, but it just didn't feel right. Right? It needed more creativity. It needed something that was like, oh, this is cool. And again, me tapping on that emotion, I'm like, well, what if we had the people, the staff, while they're there, take Polaroid photos of the guests and then attach it to the postcard. So now it's and again, see, I said postcard, not flyer. We changed the flyer into a postcard with photos from the experience. So now it's something sentimental, right? If you get a flyer on the street, you're going to go home, probably going to throw it in the car, throw it on the counter, throw it in the trash. It's going to vanish, right? But now if you have this postcard with photos from it, and you might put it on the fridge. And next thing you know, that small little Yachtly logo in the corner, just like we discussed, is kind of slowly in the back of your brain, Yachtly, Yachtly, Yachtly. You see that blue, you see the Y, you see the double A. And it's like now we have created an advertisement that lasts much longer than the traditional because it's got emotion attached to it. And then they might, send it to a friend or give it to their mom and say, oh, thinking of you. And we were actually, for a while, even thinking about offering to mail it on behalf of the people, giving them 2 copies, one to take home and one that they could mail to a friend with a discount attached, right? But again, just adding that creativity via emotion.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. That's interesting. I think that, what do you think is the thing that's keeping people from putting that sort of time into their content? Is it a lack of information? Is it a lack of time? Is it a lack of just know-how? Is it a lack of, what's the barrier? Why is there such a lack of creativity from people when they create their content? What do you think that gap is?
To be honest with you, I think it's a lack of why, right? Because if you think about it, if I'm trying to make a buck, if I'm trying to make some money, right? I'm not thinking about why. I'm thinking about, I need money, right? I'm not thinking about, oh, let's make it creative. I'm thinking about, what did this guy do? Let me do that. Oh, what are they doing? They look successful. I'm going to copy them. Okay, I'm going to copy them. I'm going to copy them. Oh, he's successful. I'm going to copy them. And you're just doing things because other people are doing them, not knowing why you're doing them, but because you think it's going to get you money, right? I think that with business owners, yes, we're all here to make money and have a life, and make a living. But I think what's preventing the creativity from being unlocked is understanding why you started in the first place. And that's exactly the thing that I've integrated strongly into my onboarding process for our new clients is, yes, we're your marketing team, we're your content team, but we sit down and I'm asking them questions like, why are you doing this? Like, what gets you fired up in the morning? What do you hate about the industry? What do you love about the industry? What do you fear? What would keep you up at night? From hearing a conversation that people didn't know you could hear. Imagine they said something about you. What's the one thing you fear that they say? Is it that you're a flake? Is it that you don't care? And like, what is the thing that you want to be associated with? And like, getting down to that emotion and finding out, because when I started, there was so much emotion, but as you get, going through the process and filing taxes and, creating the onboarding process and hiring and, doing all the boring stuff, you lose vision, you lose that why, you lose that purpose. And I think truly if we all could take a step back and reconnect with that why and reconnect with that purpose, that creativity is just going to naturally form, because instead of just making a video to make a video to potentially sell something, you're making a video because you want to spread a message. You want to deliver a message. You want to make an impact, right? And chances are your product or your service is correlated to that impact, right? So you're saying, hey, this is an issue I'm fighting for, or this is something that is passionate to me, and that's why I created this product, and that's why I started this business. You're getting people to buy in, right? So I would just honestly say that the lack of creativity comes from, forgetting why you started in the first place and keeping that fire alive and using that to, push you forward in the creative space.
And then it comes down to, because the next question that I'll hear people ask when it comes down to that, because that was gold. That was absolutely gold, and people should be taking notes on that. Then I get the question of, okay, well, how does that actually lead to business? Yeah. How does that lead to me making more money in my business? Yes, I want to spread my message, but I also want to get some tangible business results. And what's interesting is when you look at the landscape of social media right now, ads no longer look like the normal ads that they used to.
Yep.
When you go back and you look at a 70s commercial, it was a lot more straightforward. You had people that were knocking on your door trying to sell you vacuums back then. It's a different type of advertising.
Yeah.
Advertising now looks a lot more like emotion-driven content.
Yeah.
It looks a lot more like entertainment-driven content.
Yep.
I think about that video. It was, you know, that flex tape video?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, that was an ad,
Yeah.
but it was also fun and creative.
Yeah.
And then even going a totally different direction, then you have content of somebody recording a podcast where they're talking about a free strategy from content and how you can go from being broke to making a couple bucks, right?
Yeah.
And that doesn't need to be advertising.
Yeah.
But if they're talking about a concept, teaching on a concept, and then that video does really, really well because they were creative and they added and they thought about the emotion and how it was going to impact their audience, then they run an ad against it.
Yep.
And they change up the call to action.
Yep.
And they put in the copy, if you want to learn how to do X, Y, or Z, then click the link in the bio or DM me this word. It's like figuring out a way to pair the creativity and the advertising and the marketing.
Yeah.
And when people can find that pairing, that's when it seems like the real gold happens. And,
Yeah.
and at the end of the day, also, when you're creating a stronger connection with your audience, then are they not more likely to buy from you
Exactly.
if you ask them at the right opportune moment?
Exactly.
And it feels like the answer is yes, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, and I think a great example of kind of what we're both discussing is one of my favorite artists and a huge motivational figure that I looked to before he passed away, Nipsey Hussle. He had a campaign that he ran, technically a marketing campaign that he called Proud to Pay. Right? He was dropping mixtapes for a long time, and then he dropped a mixtape where it's like, hey, it's free if you want it, but if you want to pay, you can pay as much as you want. And he saw huge return. Right, because again, he had that loyalty. Because a lot of his music was not just like rap; it was much more like motivational type stuff. It was pretty cool.
Grounded on My Life.
Yeah, exactly.
Great song.
So when he released that Proud to Pay, it's like he had already developed that loyalty. He had already developed that emotion because he's not just rapping about like, oh, I'm so cool, I'm so cool. It's like, hey, here's how I did it. You can do it too. Chase your dreams. You know. So when he had that campaign launch, you know, he made a ton of money for something free. But he just said, hey, if you want to pay. And I think that's honestly like a model that I recommend to a lot of people sometimes when they're starting off in their business. It's like, hey, charge $10 or more. Like, who's to say? It's like, if I really like your content and I want to pay $50 for that hat, even though it costs 10, let me, right?
Yeah.
It's like giving a tip. So just a random little piece there. But
well, it's interesting when you think about even money and the charging of money, right? Understanding your audience is key on that as well, because there's some, for example, it reminds me of the story where a dad gave his daughter a Lamborghini, an old school Lamborghini. I think that's what it was. It was a nice car, but it was old school. And he said, all right, I want you to go to 5 different places and see how much they would pay for this car. So she went to one place and they said, oh, we'll pay $2,500. This is old.
Yeah.
The next person said, all right, well, we'll pay you 10 grand. Another person she went to said, we'll pay you 150 grand. Why was this different? There's a lot of different things that go into that. There's their purchasing power. How much money does this person have based on the item that they're trying to buy?
Yeah.
Something like that's a luxury item. I mean, I just don't have the fucking money for it right now. It's not as worth it to me.
Yeah.
Somebody that has more money or some sentimental attachment to it,
Yep.
those are huge driving factors.
Yep.
So even when it comes down to what do you charge for your product, it's subjective because this person that has more money and more sentimental attachment to this or feels like they can make a return based on this, they're going to pay more money than the person that doesn't have the money, has no sentimental attachment, and doesn't feel like they can make money from it. So understanding your audiences and charging them what it's worth, and I think that's the cool thing about that whole pick your price type of model, right? Because some people may just want to listen to it for free because it's their first time hearing about Nipsey Hussle. All right, hey, let me just listen to it, give it a try. Then you get the next consumer that's like, oh, I like his music. He seems like a good guy. Let me pay $1 for this thing. Then you have other guys that are like, dude, Nipsey, he's my guy. Let me pay. I want to support the cause. Let me pay $100 for this thing. It's not worth $100. Pay the majority standard. But people are going to pay $100. Why? Because of the emotional connection that they have with Nipsey and because of the community that he's created. Therefore, they're going to pay more. It doesn't mean that it's worth that. It's worth that subjectively. It's worth that to them. And that's something that I think a lot of people should, that even I myself need to understand more.
Well, that's gold, because it's so true because price is subjective at the end of the day, because it's like I guess cost, right? And that's why people say things like, oh, it's priceless, right? Because there's sentimental value or emotion attached to it, right? So as much as we think something's worth something, it's like, is it really, or is it just worth that to us? Right? Because like for funny example is like, I would give an arm and a leg to pay a highly skilled, top-notch editor right now. But someone else who has a ton of editors would be like, I wouldn't even pay $1. So it's like truly subjective in that sense.
Well, it's also understanding your strengths and weaknesses as a business owner. It's like, hey, if you're someone that's spectacular at marketing, you may be less inclined to pay someone $35 an hour to do a marketing position.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're a great operator and great at systems and great at working with data, you may be willing to pay that $35 because you're paying for the expert. Person has the same skill set, but why are you going to pay them this versus that?
Exactly.
It's because it's based on need.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's the Maslow's hierarchy of needs is a good concept to think about whenever you're selling a product or whenever you're thinking about, okay, why would somebody buy this thing? And how can I tap into the higher level of needs to get them to pay more money?
Yeah.
So
100%.
But let's kind of go down the rabbit hole of you as a business owner. When you think of running your business over the last 6 to 7 years, what have been some of the biggest and hardest adversities that you've overcome? Because that's something that I really want to dig into just in this podcast, and I want to shed light on for more people, because I feel like entrepreneurship in general has been idolized. It's in the limelight right now. Everybody wants to do it. Everybody wants a piece, right? But it comes with massive struggles. It comes with late nights, early mornings. It comes with days where you don't know if you're going to be able to pay your bills. It comes with those things. Everybody's gone through it. Everybody, no matter what level you get at, there's always the risk of it being even Elon Musk with his SpaceX and Tesla. Tesla could go bankrupt. Apple's probably less likely to go bankrupt because of the cash that they're sitting on. But still, people could stop buying the products. Like there's always a risk to go completely down to the ground. So talk to me about some of the adversities that you faced in your business.
Well, the most obvious one right off the bat when I first got going was, like naysayers and just, my apologies.
You're good.
Highly unprofessional of me. When I first got started, I would say the most obvious thing is the naysayers, right? Is the doubt. Because again, if you're trying to live a crazy dream, if you're trying to do something that most people don't do, right? Or you're trying to do something that you've never done before, or believe in something that most people don't believe in, right? You're gonna have the people who doubt you, right? And one of the biggest things for me was like my own family, right? Like there was a time I remember, and like I love my mom to death, and like I'm not using this against her, but I was talking about, before I even started my business, about like, oh, one day I'm gonna have a business and this, dreaming. And she's like, and I didn't go to college. I technically went, but I dropped out.
Me and you have a similar story there.
Yeah, but so then after I dropped out, I was talking to one of my friends in the kitchen, and my mom was there, and I was like, oh yeah, like I'm gonna have this and this, and I'm gonna have this business, and she essentially said that I'm gonna end up, the only way I'm gonna be around a mansion is me mowing a lawn for my friend, like who owns a mansion, right? Essentially, like full doubt, right? Like full doubt, where I'm like, what? And like, of course, friends, who are going through the traditional college route will be like, oh, that doesn't happen. You can't just like find an investor, or money just doesn't fall out of the sky. Like you have to have capital. How are you going to get the capital? The only way to start a business is to go to college first, or do this, and then you could start a business, because how are you going to do it? And it's so difficult to stand strong against that, right? Because the only person who's on your side in those type of situations is you. If you don't have that confidence, if you don't have that courage and that almost delusion, right? And I was recently talking to my girlfriend about this. It's like you have to have a certain delusion, right? You have to have a certain rejection of reality. Because if, for example, another adversity I had faced was like, I lost a job that was trying to support what I was doing, and at the same time I got like a $900 speeding ticket, and then like my living situation had to change at the drop of a hat. So like all these things were just lining up to be like, give up. But I had to look at the reality in front of me, that it's like failure, red flag, like danger, and being like, no, this is supposed to happen to open up the path for something better. Right? This is something greater than me. And again, having faith in something greater than yourself. This is something greater than me, eliminating the things that I thought were serving me to open up a path for the things that I didn't even know exist.
Yeah.
So it's a certain amount of delusion. It's a whole bunch of faith, and it's a whole bunch of, I don't care what anyone else says. I'm going to do this, right? And being okay with paying the cost of what it takes to get there. And knowing what it costs to get there, right? Because a lot of people will start this entrepreneur journey And they won't understand, like you said, that it does take the late nights and the early mornings and missing out on parties and missing out at the bar and the birthday parties and this, and, you know, showing up to Thanksgiving or Christmas late, or maybe even missing Thanksgiving dinner with the family, right? Missing important life events, and, you know, losing friends because they think you don't care just because you're working late, or losing girlfriends because they don't think you care about them because you don't have time to plan a date with them, right? Like, there's so many obstacles that come with it, and a lot of people are blind to that. So when they get hit with that first obstacle, they're like, whoa, I didn't sign up for this. This isn't a part of the game I wanted to play. So knowing what you're getting into first, right? Yeah. And that's why artists like Nipsey Hussle were so impactful to me, because he said, like, would say all the time, you know, it's like, it's lonely at the top. You know, it's like, you know, it's gonna get hard. You're gonna be alone for a big chunk of it, right? And like, I was truly on my journey, you know, alone for so much of it. And until recently with my girlfriend, she has been one of the biggest supporters that I've ever had, right? And it's a game changer, because I now have someone in my life who believes in my dream as much as I believe in my dream. And that's all an entrepreneur could ever want, right? Is someone who believes in you as much as you believe in you, right? But it starts with believing in yourself. Yeah. No one's going to believe in you until you believe in yourself. Because if I sense doubt, and like, if I don't think you're going to do it, then why would I put my faith in you? You know? So there's plenty of struggles. There's been plenty of late nights, and, you know, the bank account being negative, and, like, you know, just checks outstanding, and clients who owe me a whole bunch of money. You know, there's been plenty of that, but it's all up and down. You know, it's all ups and downs. It's all a wave. You know, and trying to navigate and push forward, and having faith that, you know, the impossible can happen, because, you know, there's been so many things in my life that have happened where I'm like, this doesn't make sense, but it's happening. Like, how did I end up in this position? Like, being on stage, like, and this is actually a really interesting thing that I would love for other entrepreneurs to, you know, really digest, is when you want something and you want to manifest something, or you have a certain dream. Like, I want to be on I was an artist, right? I'm a musician. I wanted to be on stage, right? I wanted to be on stage in front of a crowd. And I always had that dream. And then one day I opened my eyes and I was there, but I wasn't on stage how I expected. I was recording for someone who was on stage. Yeah. I was on stage, and here I am looking at this dream, and it's like, this is just as good. You know, I'm on stage, I'm with pivotal people in the music industry in front of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. Right. And then another manifestation and dream I had at one point was like, oh, in a couple years, I'm going to be on a yacht. I'm going to be on a yacht. In my brain, I was thinking I'm going to own a yacht. But then fast forward, one day I'm sitting on a yacht within a company that I'm partnered in, you know, taking photos and videos and helping with the marketing. And I'm like, wait a second, I'm on a yacht right now. You know, so understanding that you can have all your dreams, you can accomplish all your dreams. They might just be packaged differently. Yeah. You know, so it's like, be okay with the flexibility of how, whatever you want to call the higher power, or whatever you want to call something greater than yourself by, be okay with it being flexible in delivering what you desire, you know? Yeah. Those are things important to remember.
I think the important thing to note on that whole thing is, when you hear these things of bank account being negative, the late nights, the early mornings, the struggles, the adversities, hearing it is one thing, experiencing it is something totally different. And that's where I think that it's good to have respect and perspective on things, because I never realized the level of effort that goes in when people say 12, 16-hour workdays, until you start to do a couple of them. Yeah. And then you start to see the effects of it. And then you start to see the effects on your business in both positive and in a positive way, and then the effects on your life in a negative way, where some of these adversities start to hit. And I think that just the respect of it is something that I didn't always have. But once you get into it, you start to truly understand the gains and the losses that can come with these things. Yeah. And I think that's the key, because yes, you got to have the delusion, right? You got to go into it. Yeah. But it's also important to temper your expectations, like you just said, and also be prepared to not know what it feels like, but have respect when it comes. Yeah. Because you don't know what it's going to feel like when that first client that owes you $5,000 is like, hey, I'm canceling. Yeah. The client that owes you 10 grand, he's like, oh, I'm canceling. Yeah. Yeah, I got 1 week left, but I'm not going to be paying you. Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah. Well, I was banking on that for this next hire, for this next month of rent, for this next month of my own rent to pay myself. Oh, I was actually excited. And then it falls flat. And you hear it, but experiencing it and understanding it, prepare yourself.
Yeah.
Have respect.
Yeah.
And move forward. But I agree with you that the ignorance is the ignorance in going after it, regardless of what other people tell you, regardless of what your logic tells you. There's like this balance that you have to have, which is really interesting.
Well, and ignorance is a good word, because I was actually kind of deconstructing that phrase, ignorance is bliss, recently, because when I've heard that so many times in my life, and I always thought of it like, oh, like, I hate to say it like this, but like, oh, a stupid person is blissful because they're just stupid, right? And that's how I kind of digested it. But until recently, kind of talking about what you're talking about from a business perspective or a dream perspective, it's, well, maybe it's not ignorance is bliss because, if you're stupid, you just don't know better. Maybe ignorance is bliss because if you can find yourself in a voluntary ignorance against viewing something as a negative, or viewing something as defeating, or viewing an action within the world around you as a failure, or and choosing to view it ignorantly, right? Because you can consider it ignorance to look at, oh, I just lost 2 clients. I'm back on my rent by 3 months, and like my car payment's due. I owe this person money. I owe this. How could you not look at that like, oh, I should just give up? It takes a certain amount of ignorance, and I think that's where that ignorance is bliss is truly powerful.
And I think that it's also something that needs to be managed, because ignorance doesn't mean don't learn things, don't take things as a from a realistic standpoint.
Yeah.
But one thing that really impresses me, I bring up Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, and Gary Vee and Alex Hormozi a hell of a lot, but it's because I respect what they've built from a visionary standpoint. They have a tangible business that's grown massively. And one thing that I hear that's kind of reiterated amongst them is, look, it's okay to be realistic and to understand that you may be failing. And Elon Musk even says, like, there's a 99% likelihood, 95% chance that this thing could fail, but we're going to work like hell to make it successful. Yeah. And I think that's the key. It's not being ignorant by not learning as much as possible, but it's almost turning off that risk averse filter in your brain, where it's like, I'm going to choose not to see this risk because this thing is important enough for me to get done, and I'm going to work like hell. And yes, it could fail, and I could fall flat on my face, but I'm going to see the path to victory. I'm going to follow this. It almost reminds me of like Marvel and the Avengers Endgame. It's like Doctor Strange said, there's 1 in a billion opportunities to actually win this thing. Let's hope this is the one. And it's like, you just got to fight like hell to make it that one. But also, don't be ignorant by not learning the things, because if you take that as, I'm just not going to learn, I'm just going to go at this blindly, you're going to fail. You want to learn as much as possible and almost put like your tunnel vision on and look at that one path to victory.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost, I would say, because with that same concept, right, it's like you're suggesting, and it's 100% true. It's like, you can't just not pay attention to it. It is real. You are failing, like, being behind on your bills and losing a client. It is bad, right? But you have to take it a step further, like you're suggesting, and say, okay, no, it's not like I'm game over. This is just an obstacle that's offering an opportunity to show me a point within myself and my business that is weak, and that I now have the luxury to be able to view myself from someone else's perspective or from another perspective to make myself better, right? Viewing it as an obstacle to be conquered or an opportunity to find a solution, right? You are guaranteed to fail, right? And I think it's like, that's what the whole concept of like not being afraid to fail, or it's like being okay with failure. You will fail, right? You will fail, but you only lose if you stop trying after you fail, right? Because failure is an opportunity to become better, right? So I think it's truly like you're suggesting with that focus. It's like, yes, I could focus on how potentially defeating this is, or I could focus on that 1% that this could be the best lesson I ever needed to improve the area that caused me to fail. Right? So being able to see through that. It
speaks to the importance of having a massive vision as well. Because when the vision is massive, you're pushed through the things that you would normally give up on. If your only goal is to make $10,000 a month, that's it. That's the end all. Well, fuck, I just lost this client. Let me pivot strategies. Well, this sucks. But if your goal is to change the world in your own specific way, and your world can be subjective, it could be your family, it could be your community, it could be your state, it could be the entire world, it could be the universe, it could be however big or small you want it to be. But if you have that bigger vision that's long term, when this short term thing happens, look, man, It's just a quick adversity. I'm going to be alive 12 months from now.
Yeah.
And that's what's helped me, but it can be really hard sometimes. So one of my personal missions is I want to help change what the definition of success is for people, because a lot of people think that, all right, well, success means that I got to make a lot of money.
Yeah.
Success means that I have to build a big family. Success means this, success means that. But there's so many different definitions of success.
Yeah.
And that's why my mission is to help spread these thought leaders' voices and help show what the journey actually looks like, to redefine what success looks like, to redefine what the path looks like to even get there in the first place. And that shifts and pivots all the time. I've had points where our clients have gone down and we've had almost no clients. And then it's like, well, shit. But you just have to look at it and be like, okay, this is the overall goal we're trying to achieve. Maybe this strategy to get there in the short term just isn't the strategy that we need to take. Maybe we need to take a different strategy and make a left so we can go right to get back to where we need to go, right?
Exactly,
But I think that's why having that big vision matters. Because then you can make pivots and you don't feel as bad when the short-term thing doesn't work out.
Exactly. Well, and like you said, you don't get discouraged, right? Because if you lose faith, you're done. Then you're done, right? If you don't think you can do it, you're done. So having something bigger than yourself, like you're suggesting, right? Where it's like, hey, I'm not just trying to make money or get this, like that's fine, obviously. But like having something so big where it's like, oh no, I would die for this cause, you know? So like losing a couple clients, I'm still breathing.
But that's why CEOs are so valuable. And I think that's understated, because the reason why CEOs and founders and these visionaries are so valuable is because that's actually very hard to do. Not a lot of people can conceptualize what it takes to build the company that Apple is. Not a lot of people can conceptualize what it takes to get us to Mars. Not a lot of people can conceptualize what it takes to build a $100 million business and help hundreds of thousands of business owners. And even know what is step one to getting there. First of all, how do you even get crazy enough to think this big up here? And then secondly, how do you even figure out what step one to getting there is? And then push through the adversity to get to step 100 and then go past that. And that's why CEOs and visionaries are so valuable, because anybody can start doing some activities in the short term to get incremental results, but to be so delusional and crazy enough to create a vision and a dream that can inspire hundreds of thousands of people and be able to actually make progress to get there, that's where the value's at.
100%. Well, and that goes back to kind of what we were talking about, not only creativity, but like with AI. That's what it's not going to be able to replace, right? That's what AI is not going to be able to replace. And that's why what you're talking about with that vision and that why and that purpose, that's where I believe a lot of the creativity comes from. Because then you have that crazy vision, you have this, and I feel like with entrepreneurs and CEOs and so on, and when you, like having a dream that big, you're forced to be able to think so creatively and solution oriented, right? Where even though X happens and it seems the worst, you're so creative or you're so solution oriented or so focused on that dream that it's like, oh, well, technically, if you think about it like this is exactly what we wanted, right? Like with your example, it's like, hey, we don't have any clients at this moment in time, but maybe this is now allowing us to make a harder pivot. Whereas if we had even 2 clients hanging on, it's going to be much harder to pivot because we're still doing the old way and half-assed doing the new way. Whereas now we have the opportunity to fully focus on the new way. Right. So being able to creatively think about things in a way that doesn't ignore reality, that doesn't ignore the danger, but still kind of satisfies your logical brain while still allowing you to be hopeful and imaginative. I think it's a very difficult tightrope walk, but if you can pull it off, I think that's the success.
Well, one thing that comes down when it comes to facing adversity, right, that I've been thinking about a hell of a lot lately, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on it, is we oftentimes put these limiting beliefs on what we're capable of doing. But one thing that I've started to learn is this thing called the first principles. The first principles are what is objectively true, what is 100% true. AKA, when this thing happens, this thing will 100% of the time happen. And I think that we've got to think more in that box, because oftentimes we'll say, well, if I do this thing could happen. No, ignore that. What will happen if you do this particular thing? What are the consistent truths of what happens? So, for example, if I make 1,000 reach outs, is it 98% likely that I'm going to get one client? Okay, perfect. So that's an objective truth, something that you can follow. What happens when I do this activity and what result does it lead to? And when you start to understand what those principles are, what those truths are, then it helps you build towards a bigger vision. Because then you can start to stack these different things that you know it's going to happen. You know that these are a reality. And then what it allows you to do is these things are real. So when you start to think, oh, that's not possible, this is a distraction, this is this is that, then you're like, wait, that doesn't fit within the truth bucket.
Those
are just things that I'm thinking to myself, but there's actually no tangible truth. There's no tangible proof as to whether that's right or wrong. These things I know to be right. These things I'm not so sure. So I can challenge these and see if it's actually true. People say, oh, email marketing doesn't work. Is that an objective truth or is that a subjective truth? And if you get rid of that, understand that that's something that's up in the air. Test it, just like you would in science. You test things, you test theories to see if they're a reality. There's a reason it's called a theory. So you test it and then it becomes a truth. And that's something that I think that I have to myself learn and that other people should capture as well, or just really bring into their business as well, because what is true versus what is not true, and are you believing that some things are true when you truly haven't tested it yet, and you're just going based on other people's perceptions or your mind putting a limiting cap on what you can do.
Exactly. Well, I think an interesting tactic that kind of plays really well into that model of thinking is breaking things down to their simplest true form. Right? Because you could say, oh, if I send 1,000 cold DMs or whatever, right? If I send 1,000 cold reaches or outreaches, I'm going to make $10,000. It's like, well, yeah, maybe, but no, like there's no guarantee. But then it's like, okay, well, if I send 1,000, cold DMs, I'm going to connect with 1,000 people. And now my opportunity, you know what I mean? Like breaking it down step by step where it's not so focused on, again, it sounds counterintuitive because we're talking about focusing on that goal and that purpose, but being realistic with, oh no, all I need to do is just send 1,000 cold DMs, because now the truth is I'm increasing the odds of getting closer to the $10,000. I'm not guaranteed to get 10K off of sending 1,000 DMs, but I'm guaranteed to improve my odds. Right, I'm guaranteed to improve my chances.
Well, that's where I feel like they combine a lot, because a lot of people may live in the middle, but in reality, if you live up here and down here, where you understand that this is what we're working towards, and you understand what the fundamental truths of business or whatever you're doing are, then you can start to stack these to get to that point. You understand what is real versus what's not real. And if you can keep stacking those and identify what's true, and then people are saying, oh, well, this doesn't work. Oh, fuck that. I know that this works, and that isn't in one of my truth buckets. So it's like, it's living in the up here, because a lot of people will try to throw different problems, different rules, regulations. This works, this doesn't work, blah, 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 blah. No, break it down to the core basics of what it is.
Exactly. And that's, and even with, just dealing with negative thinking, right? Because that's a huge roadblock for a lot of entrepreneurs and just people in general, any walk of life. And that same concept you're talking about, breaking it down to the fundamentals and finding out the truths, right? For example, my girlfriend was recently doubting some of the content because that she's been producing for herself, because there hasn't been as much consistency as she would like, right? And she kind of came out and was essentially like talking to me. She's like, what we're doing is not working. And I said, okay, hold on. That's like a big thing to say. Let's break it down, right? What we're doing isn't working. Okay, well, what are you talking about? Okay, well, the content's not working. But it looks, the content, no, we got 2 million views on this video, so some of the content's working. Okay, well, some of the content isn't. And to continue to break it down until eventually it's, I'm not happy with the consistency at which we've been posting, and I'd love to post more. Like breaking down that negative thought that is so like, it's not working. That sounds so big and so defeating, but then if you, what is it? What's not working about it? And then breaking it down to the specifics and the fundamentals. Now you have a much more manageable problem and a much more solution-based platform to create a solution, versus this is so big, I don't even know where to start. Break it down, find out what the real issue is, and it's much easier to manage.
Which is why it's also so important to educate yourself. Constantly educate, constantly test, so you're not ignorant of what the strategies and tactics and truths are, so you can break it down to the fundamentals. Because if you don't educate, you don't know why this piece of content works. What are the components? What goes into making a good piece of content? So no, hey man, that's all really, really good stuff. I think that's what we're gonna end with today. I think we covered a lot of really good topics. I hope that everybody thought so as well. And if you guys have any questions for my man Travis, where can they find you? Where can they reach out to you at?
Best way to reach me would probably be at my Instagram, Travis Fisher _. Or Rose Street Co. on Instagram. That's the best way.
I love it. All right, man. Well, hey, is there anything else that you want to cover before we finish off here?
I don't think so. Just, believe in yourself. Don't let anyone tell you no. And everything is possible. As cheesy as it sounds,
I like it. All right. Well, hey, man, thank you very much. I appreciate you. And I will see you guys on the next episode.